For the first 20 years of my life, I lived in a world built of quiet moments. I was an introvert, a label I wore like a heavy, yet comfortable coat. My days were filled with books, daydreams, and the silent hum of my own thoughts. I found solace in solitude, and my energy drained quickly in the presence of others. Looking back now, from the vantage point of today, November 24, 2025, I see those years with a mix of fondness and a deep sense of regret. I cherish the rich inner world I cultivated, but I also see the countless missed opportunities that passed me by like ships in the night, their lights blinking invitingly as I remained on my quiet shore, convinced I was safer alone. The regret is not for the person I was, but for the connections I never allowed myself to make. I remember birthday parties I politely declined, school events I watched from the sidelines, and countless conversations I never started. Each refusal was a small stone I placed in a wall around myself, a wall I thought was for protection, but ultimately became a prison. The world seemed to be having a grand, noisy celebration, and I was listening to the muffled music from behind a closed door. I told myself I preferred the silence, that the party was too loud anyway, but a part of me always wondered what it would be like to dance. This quiet existence was not without its own kind of peace. I became a keen observer of human nature, noticing the small details others might miss in their rush to speak. My imagination flourished in the fertile ground of solitude, and I developed a strong sense of self-reliance. I did not need others to feel complete, or so I believed. Yet this self-sufficiency was a double-edged sword. It taught me how to be alone, but it did not teach me how to be together. I was an island, and while my shores were beautiful and serene, they were also profoundly isolated from the bustling mainland of human connection. The cost of this isolation became clearer as the years went on. Friendships, I realized, are not just about having fun, they are about building a shared history. They are the threads that weave our individual stories into a larger, more beautiful tapestry. My tapestry felt sparse, with long stretches of a single lonely thread. I had memories, but they were mostly my own, unshared and unverified by a friend's laughter or knowing glance. I had built a life of quiet contemplation, but I began to suspect that a life without shared joy and mutual support was only half a beide. Obederd te staan en alweber derf. Ein shad I durin tide. Satuan de drisa dembide. I dern dandan, I Beringberg. The beautiful, but unfinished story. Loneliness was a constant, quiet companion during my introverted years. It wasn't a loud, dramatic pain, but a slow, creeping ache that settled deep in my bones. It was the feeling of being a ghost in my own life, present in a room but completely unseen and unheard. I remember sitting in crowded school cafeterias, surrounded by the roar of 100 conversations, yet feeling utterly alone. It was as if I were encased in a soundproof bubble, watching the world move on without me. This feeling of being forgotten was one of the heaviest burdens I carried, a constant reminder that I was on the outside looking in. This profound isolation took a significant toll on my mental health. The quiet that once felt peaceful began to feel empty and oppressive. My inner world, once a sanctuary, became a chamber of echoes where my anxieties and insecurities bounced back at me, amplified and distorted. I struggled with waves of depression that would pull me under, making it even harder to reach out or connect with anyone. It's a cruel cycle. Loneliness fuels depression, and depression deepens the loneliness. I felt trapped, wanting desperately to connect but feeling paralyzed by a fear and sadness that I could not explain to anyone because I had no one to explain it to. There were moments of intense pain that I still remember with clarity. I recall one evening, scrolling through photos online, seeing a group of acquaintances celebrating a milestone together. They were laughing, hugging, and sharing a moment of pure joy. I wasn't jealous of the party itself, but of the easy, comfortable connection they shared. In that moment, the weight of my isolation felt crushing. It was the stark realization that if I were to disappear, it might be days or even weeks before anyone noticed. The thought was not dramatic. It was just a quiet, devastating fact of the life I had built for myself. The struggle was silent and invisible to the outside world. To teachers and family, I was just the quiet one, the well-behaved girl who never caused any trouble. They didn't see the internal battles I was fighting every day. They didn't understand that my shyness wasn't a choice, but a cage. The effort it took to simply exist in social settings was exhausting, and I often retreated into myself as a form of self-preservation. This retreat, however, only reinforced the cycle of loneliness and sadness, leaving me to navigate the turbulent waters of my mental health completely on my own. School was a social landscape I never learned to navigate. From the playgrounds of elementary school to the crowded hallways of high school, I felt like a tourist with a faulty map. While other kids effortlessly formed groups, shared inside jokes and built friendships, I stood on the periphery. The invisible wall of my introversion and shyness was always there. I wanted to join the conversation, to laugh along with a joke, or to ask to sit with a group at lunch, but the words would get stuck in my throat. The fear of saying the wrong thing, of being rejected, or of simply not being interesting enough, was overwhelming. This difficulty was magnified when I went away to college and moved into a dormitory. Dorm life is designed for social interaction. It's a built-in community of shared spaces, late-night study sessions, and spontaneous adventures. For me, it was a source of constant, low-grade anxiety. My dorm room door remained closed most of the time, a physical barrier that mirrored the emotional one I had built around myself. I would hear laughter echoing down the hall and feel a pang of longing, but the thought of knocking on a neighbor's door and saying hello felt as daunting as climbing a mountain. The result was a profound lack of friends. I had acquaintances, people I would offer a small, shy smile to in class or in the dining hall, but no one I could confide in. I had no one to call when I felt homesick, no one to celebrate a good grade with, and no one to simply watch a movie with on a lazy Sunday. My college years, which are often described as the best time of one's life, were marked by this deep-seated solitude. I watched others form the lifelong bonds that people talk about, and I felt a growing sense of regret that I was missing out on a fundamental part of the human experience. My inability to socialize wasn't due to a lack of desire. Deep down, I craved connection. I wanted to have friends who understood me and to share my life with others, but my introverted nature, combined with years of social avoidance, had left me without the necessary skills. I didn't know how to initiate a conversation, how to keep it going, or how to move from a casual chat to a genuine friendship. The invisible wall felt solid and insurmountable, and I had resigned myself to a life lived in its shadow, never realizing that I was the one who had the power to tear it down. The change did not happen overnight. It was not a single dramatic event, but a slow, dawning realization that culminated around my 23rd birthday. I was living on my own after college, working my first full-time job, and the patterns of my past had followed me. My evenings and weekends were quiet, filled with the same solitude that had defined my life so far. One Saturday, I sat in my silent apartment and looked at the years ahead of me. I saw a long, empty road stretching into the distance, and for the first time, the loneliness felt less like a familiar ache and more like an urgent alarm. The turning point was a moment of stark clarity. I realized that if I did nothing, nothing would change. The next 20 years of my life would be a repeat of the first 20. I would continue to be a spectator, watching life from the sidelines, and my regrets would only grow heavier with time. I was the architect of my own isolation, and only I could begin the process of dismantling it. The fear of staying the same finally became greater than the fear of change. I was tired of feeling invisible, tired of the regret, and tired of the quiet sadness that had become my default state. There was no magic formula. The decision was born out of desperation and a flicker of hope. I chose to try being more extroverted, not because I believed my introverted nature was wrong, but because my expression of it had become unhealthy. My shyness and social anxiety had taken over, preventing me from experiencing a balanced life. I understood that I would likely always need my quiet time to recharge, but I no longer wanted that quiet time to be my only time. I wanted to add another dimension to my life, one filled with people, laughter, and shared experiences. I wanted to learn how to be both quiet and connected, so, at 23, I made a conscious choice. It was a private promise to myself. I decided I would no longer let fear make my decisions for me. I would actively seek out discomfort and push the boundaries of my comfort zone. I didn't want to become a different person entirely, but I wanted to become a fuller, more engaged version of myself. I wanted to give myself the chance to build the friendships I had always craved. It was a terrifying decision, but it was also the most liberating one I had ever made. I was choosing to step out from behind the wall and into the light. My journey began with small, deliberate actions that felt monumental at the time. My first goal was simple: learn to say yes. For years, my automatic response to any social invitation had been a polite but firm no, thank you. I now forced myself to accept invitations, even when every fiber of my being screamed in protest. The first time I said yes to after-work drinks with colleagues, my heart pounded for hours beforehand. I was terrified I would have nothing to say, that I would sit in awkward silence, and that everyone would regret inviting me. But I went anyway, clutching my drink like a life raft. The experience was not a magical transformation. It was awkward. I did spend some time in silence, listening more than I spoke. But I also discovered something important. People were not nearly as critical as I had imagined. No one seemed to mind that I was quiet. A colleague asked me about my weekend, and I managed to string together a few sentences about a book I was reading. It was a small, clumsy exchange, but it was a start. I had survived. More than that, I had taken a concrete step outside my comfort zone, and the world didn't end. This tiny victory gave me the courage to say yes again. Another practical step I took was to practice small talk in low-stakes environments. The grocery store cashier, the barista at the coffee shop, the person walking their dog in my neighborhood. These became my training partners. I started by making eye contact and offering a simple smile. Then I graduated to saying hello and have a good day. Eventually, I worked up the courage to make a small comment about the weather or compliment someone on their dog. Most interactions were brief and forgettable, but they were crucial practice. Each one was like a small workout for my atrophied social muscles. These first steps were about breaking the powerful habit of avoidance. I had spent 2 decades actively avoiding social interactions, and I needed to retrain my brain. I learned to tolerate the initial wave of anxiety, to breathe through it, and to act despite it. I sought advice from articles and books on social skills, treating it like a subject I needed to study. I learned about open-ended questions, active listening, and body language. It felt mechanical and unnatural at first, but I trusted the process. I was learning a new language, the language of connection, and I was slowly, painstakingly, learning to speak up. After mastering the initial steps of saying yes and making small talk, I knew I needed a more structured way to practice and meet people. Waiting for invitations was too passive. I had to create my own opportunities. I looked for groups centered around my existing interests, thinking it would be easier to connect with people if we already had something in common. I found a local book club that met once a month. The thought of walking into a room full of strangers was terrifying, but the shared love for books provided a safety net. The conversation had a built-in topic, which took some of the pressure off me. My first book club meeting was a nerve-wracking affair. I sat quietly for the first half, just listening to others share their passionate opinions. My old habits were telling me to stay silent and invisible, but I remembered my promise to myself. During a lull in the conversation, I took a deep breath and offered a small thought about a character's motivation. My voice was shaky, but I said it. To my astonishment, another member agreed with me and expanded on my point. It was a small moment of validation, a signal that my voice had a place in the conversation. This encouraged me to speak up a few more times throughout the evening. From the book club, I branched out. I joined a beginner's hiking group. Being outdoors and engaged in a physical activity made conversation feel more natural and less intense. There were natural pauses while we navigated a tricky part of the trail, and the beautiful scenery provided an easy topic of conversation. I learned to ask people questions about their lives, their jobs, and their interests. I focused on being genuinely curious about them, which shifted the focus away from my own anxiety. I discovered that most people enjoy talking about themselves, and being a good listener was a powerful way to build rapport. Over time, these activities led to real friendships. A woman from my book club invited me for coffee to continue our discussion. A couple from the hiking group asked if I wanted to join them for a different trail the following weekend. These invitations were the result of my consistent efforts. I was no longer a passive observer, I was an active participant. I learned how to move from a group acquaintance to an individual friend by taking the initiative to suggest a one-on-one hangout. Each successful interaction was a building block, slowly constructing a new social foundation for my life and proving that friendships were not a mysterious prize, but a skill that could be learned and practiced. As I continued to practice and put myself out there, my life began to change in beautiful and unexpected ways. The silence of my apartment was gradually replaced by the sounds of a fuller life. The ringing of my phone with a friend's call, the ping of a text message making plans, and the echo of laughter from a recent get-together filled the spaces that loneliness once occupied. My quiet inner world was still there, a place I could retreat to and recharge, but it was no longer my only world. It was now complemented by a vibrant outer world filled with a symphony of different voices, stories, and perspectives. One of the most profound changes was the simple joy of shared experiences. I discovered the pleasure of a spontaneous dinner with a friend after a long day, the comfort of having someone to talk to who genuinely understood my struggles, and the delight of creating new inside jokes. I went to my first music festival, not as a lone observer in the crowd, but with a group of friends, singing along and sharing the energy of the moment. These were the kinds of experiences I used to watch from afar, and now I was in the middle of them. Each shared memory was a bright, colorful thread, added to my once sparse tapestry. Opening up to people taught me so much about myself. In conversations, I was forced to articulate my own thoughts and feelings, which helped me understand them more clearly. My friends reflected parts of me back to myself, sometimes showing me strengths I didn't know I had. They challenged my perspectives, introduced me to new hobbies and ideas, and encouraged me to try things I never would have on my own. Connection did not erase my identity, it enriched it. I was still an introvert who valued deep conversation and quiet moments, but now I had people with whom I could share them. The happiness that came from these new connections was a gentle, steady warmth. It was different from the fleeting highs of achievements or possessions. It was a deep-seated sense of belonging, of being seen and valued for who I was. I remember one evening after hosting a small game night at my apartment, I sat in the quiet aftermath, looking at the empty snack bowls and scattered cards. Instead of feeling empty, the room felt full of warmth and happy echoes. I was no longer a ghost in my own life. I was present, connected, and deeply, genuinely happy. The new friendships I forged did more than just fill my present with happiness. They began to heal the wounds of my past. The years of loneliness had left me with a deep-seated belief that I was somehow unworthy of connection, that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Every time a new friend reached out, included me, or confided in me, it was a powerful counter-argument to that old, damaging narrative. Their acceptance and affection slowly chipped away at the wall of insecurity I'd built around my heart. The regret for my past didn't disappear, but it began to lose its sharp, painful edge. One of the most important lessons I learned is that friendship is a powerful antidote to mental health struggles. In the past, I had navigated my anxiety and depression alone, trapped in the echo chamber of my own negative thoughts. Now, I had people I could talk to. I learned that saying I'm having a hard day out loud to a trusted friend could strip the feeling of its power. Receiving a simple response like "I'm here for you" or "let's get some tea" was a lifeline. This support system didn't magically cure my struggles, but it made them infinitely more manageable. I was no longer fighting my battles alone. It is never too late to change the story you tell yourself. For years my story was "I am too shy" or "I am not good at making friends." By taking action, I was able to write a new chapter. I proved to myself that my past did not have to dictate my future. This realization was incredibly empowering. It taught me that we have more agency over our lives than we often believe. We can learn new skills, we can change our habits, and we can consciously choose to build a life that brings us joy and connection, no matter how old we are or how long we've been stuck in a certain pattern. Another crucial moral I took away is that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. My help came in many forms. It was reading books on social dynamics, it was practicing conversations with baristas, and eventually, it was being vulnerable with my new friends. Admitting that I struggled with socializing and wanted to get better was a key step. People were surprisingly understanding and supportive. This lesson extends beyond social skills, whether it's for mental health, a career change, or personal growth. Asking for guidance and support is one of the bravest and most effective things we can do for ourselves. If you are reading this today and my story of loneliness resonates with you, I want you to hear this. You are not alone in your feeling, and it is never, ever too late to begin anew. The past may be filled with regrets for missed parties, unspoken words, and friendships that never blossomed. You cannot change that past, but you hold all the power to shape your present and your future. The road out of isolation may seem long and intimidating, but it begins with a single small step. A simple hello, a yes to an invitation, or joining a group that shares your passion. Do not believe the lie that your personality is fixed and unchangeable. While you may always be a person who needs solitude to recharge, you can also be a person who thrives on connection. You can learn the skills of socializing just as you would learn any other skill, through practice, patience, and a willingness to be a beginner. You will be awkward at first, you will make mistakes, but every attempt is a victory. Every small interaction strengthens your social muscles and brings you one step closer to the connections you crave. Be kind to yourself during this process. The world is full of people who are also hoping to connect. For every person like you, sitting alone and wishing for a friend, there is another person feeling the exact same way. By taking the risk to reach out, you are not only helping yourself, but you may also be answering someone else's quiet prayer for connection. Friendships are waiting for you in book clubs, hiking groups, volunteer organizations, and neighborhood coffee shops. Your people are out there, waiting for you to take that first brave step toward them. The happiness and healing that await you are worth the fear, so I encourage you to start today. Look at the long road ahead, not with fear of the journey, but with anticipation for the destination. A life rich with shared laughter, mutual support, and a deep sense of belonging is possible for you. The regret of yesterday can be replaced by the joy of today and the hope of tomorrow. Your story is not over. In fact, the most exciting chapter may be the one you are just about to write. Take a deep breath. Step out from behind the wall. A new beginning is waiting for you.